acknowledged that the council are proposing to shut off 4 children's centres in such a vital service to our community. So, on that basis, can I please ask the portfolio holder to confirm whether the staff at the children's centres, which are proposed to be closed subject to consultation, be redeployed, or are they actually going to be the efficiency saving?
Thank you. Councillor Harding, would you like to respond to the question, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you very much for the question. I welcome all the public questions tonight. This evening, members of the public are going to succeed in one night asking me more questions than 14 Labour councillors combined have managed to table me in 7 months. So, well done. And considering lots of them are Labour activists, you might want to wonder, maybe that lot should be sat there and that lot should be sat there. The front line is going to be really very safe. There will be a small amount of redundancies, hopefully under 10, hopefully very much under 10. And where possible, staff will be redeployed within the council. But let me say this, there will be very few impacts on the front line. The bulk of the £1.4 million saving in bulk is coming from getting rid of duplicated contracts with lots of fragmented services. A huge amount is coming from getting rid of extremely expensive building rental. For example, look, you're tutting. You're happy that we spend almost, I think it's over £22,000 to rent the space in a private nursery in East Tilbury, a tiny space, not much bigger than that actually. That's where a huge amount of saving will come from. And in terms of the staff, the majority of roles that are going to be reduced are things like administration, reception positions, management positions, and as we formulate the single point of access offer with education and health services merged, there will be a wider range of services offered to people. So at the £1.4 million worth of savings, actual redundancies, the bulk of the savings is coming from astronomical rents. So we should be looking at the quality of the service, not just the cash spent on it.
Mrs Watson, do you wish to ask a supplementary question? Sorry.
So when will the staff be put at risk of redundancy then?
Obviously, in line with council procedures, they will go onto a list to look at redispersal at the end of the consultation after analysing the results. Because we're talking about a reasonably small amount of posts, it wouldn't be appropriate for me to speculate who's going to go where and who's going to go when, but there is very clearly defined process in law. But again, the majority of these costs are coming from getting rid of duplication in the system, getting rid of extremely expensive building rental, not from frontline staff.
Thank you.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, councillors and officers. My question is to Councillor Hagan. With the high number of young families, why does the portfolio holder believe that there is no need for children's centre in Chapter 100, considering the current proposals being consulted on?
Councillor Harding, would you like to answer the question, please?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's quite amusing that even though Mr Abbas was not elected as the Labour councillor at South Chapel in May, he succeeded in asking me a question on children's centres faster than any of that lot have done in half a year. Well done. Despite the past political reign, I did not say that there was no need for service, so let's get things into perspective. Currently, we pay, I think it's just over £37,000 for the Chatham facility. It is not a children's centre, it is a small space above the Beacon Centre, the church. It is not a purpose-built facility. What is proposed is all the children's centre services are going to be offered out of Warren Primary and the Belmont Children's Centre. So they will still be offered, but we are going to get rid of the astronomical rent for a building that isn't particularly fit for purpose. So at no stage was it said that children's centre services aren't valuable. I think it's been suggested on that side because it kind of fitted a rhetoric of closures. And what I'd also say is that thanks to the single point of access, merging health and education services together, people are going to be able to get access to services they didn't even know existed, and that's the beauty of outreach. You can reach beyond the people who just come to a children's centre, and you can reach out to the type of people who would benefit from the services. And I've been quite clear that children's centres in Thurrock currently serve about 75% of eligible parents. We are not aiming to continue to serve those 75% with the new service. We are aiming to serve up to 97%. That is because that is what would be graded as outstanding. This should not be about bricks and mortar. This should be about outcome for children.
Mr. West, would you like to pose a supplementary?
Yes, thank you, Dr. Handler. What is the current footprint of Shepherd Handler Center in terms of how many children are helped by the children's center, and what will this number be after the closure?
I really do want to answer.
It's because one's on.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, in light of the time, if you were to use your indulgence, I'm still happy to answer the other public questions. I don't know the, you asked about the specific numbers in Chafford. We can quite happily supply the figures to you, but as I've said, at the moment, the Children's Centre service in Thurrock serves about 75% of eligible parents. No one will be turned away. There will not be a drop in service. There will be an increase in service. We are aiming not just to serve the 75% of eligible parents who currently come to centres. We are aiming to use our outreach services to go beyond and go up to, hopefully, 97% to build an outstanding service. More people will be served. Sorry, Oliver, does that not match the supplementary you wrote? Such a shame.
I'm just scared to ask the question to Miss. My question is, it is proposed subject to consultation that every children's centre will be closed. If so, which of the activities currently available will still be available to local parents and which will not?
Councillor Holden, can you answer the question, please?
Thank you very much for your question. It is proposed that all timetable services that are currently offered will still be offered. Yep. All of them, Ollie. I can explain how this will be done. I know it sounds counterintuitive, but what you can currently get from an expensive building with fragmented services, you'll still be able to get from one joined-up provider reaching out from other locations. What will change will that the current drop-in service, where people can just drop in access services, these will just now need to be booked. And that makes sense. If you want to measure the service's impact to see how it's actually helping children, obviously you want booked services, you want a firm framework so you can actually see how they help children. But every timetable service currently on offer will still be on offer. And again, that's because with a joined up service, education and health together, you won't have one team rushing around trying to help a child and another team not even aware of that child because the two teams can't talk to each other. But in answer to your question, I think it's unfortunate that instead of asking me questions in the chamber, instead of writing to me, emailing me, Facebooking me, tweeting me, or in any way communicating with me, no one on the Labour benches spoke to me about this, because if they had spoken to me about it, I would have pointed out there's a difference between getting rid of duplicated services, getting rid of expensive building rentals, but keeping the basic service that actually serves the public. It's not about the amount of money we're spending, the amount of staff we have, the amount of buildings we have. It is about outcomes for children. The services we're offering for children to improve lives are very much in place.
97.
Councillors, please calm down in the corner. Councillor Cockshaw.
Yes.
Yes, calm down, please. Miss Thurrock, would you like to pose a supplementary question?
Right, thank you for letting me ask this question. To Councillor Holden again. What is the portfolio holder's message to families with young children in Stamford? I hope will no longer have access to a local children's centre if the proposed changes, subject to consultation, are adopted.
Councillor Holden, would you please answer the question?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My message is don't listen to Labour councillors who don't turn up to cabinet meetings, don't ask questions, and then try and tell people they're losing vital services when they're not, and certainly don't listen to that one.
Councillor, Councillor, please, I find that quite offensive. Can you
withdraw. Sorry.
Thank you.
All timetable services that are currently offered will continue to be offered. In the case of the Stanford Children's Centre, I can't remember the figure, but the tens of thousands of pounds that we currently spend in the Stanford Children's Centre, instead there'll be outreach work from Abertall. Again, not just accepting we want to deal with 75% of people currently engaged with centres, but reaching past them and trying to get upwards to 97%. So the only things that are going to be lost will be having a full-time receptionist at the centre and some management bits and pieces. The fact of the matter is, it will be a better service. And beforehand, children's centres, so what currently is offered at Stanford, is a service to 0 to 5-year-olds. The new service is going to go up to 11 and then eventually 19. It will be a 0 to 19 service, a true wraparound service for children. Merging health, merging education, going further than ever before. We can go further than ever before because we are actually reforming the service. We are not just leaving it there to rot. Labour say closures. Closures imply that services are ending. This is not closure, this is reform.
Mr. Hand, do you wish to ask a supplementary question?
It's all very well and good to talk about all these efficiency savings, like you can have health services without nurses, and police forces without police officers, and fire services without firefighters. But if all these centres are closing, physically, where exactly are these people going to go to get their services?
Well, again, it will be outreach. Where do the people of the homelessness currently go? There's not a children's centre there. Where do the people of Blackshots currently go? There's not a children's centre there, but there's still access to services. Where do the people of Alsey go? Not a children's centre there, there's still access services. The point is, what services does the council offer and what do we want to do to help children? One of the key metrics is going to be good early years development for children, making sure that we can actually demonstrate the services that we offer have an impact of that child in the classroom. We don't need to measure how many buildings we've got to do that. We don't need to measure how many fragmented services we've got to do that. We need to look at a child and say, this child came into the system when he was 4 and he was performing at X level. This child is leaving the system at 19 and he attained that level. I want to see better outcomes for children and I will simply not accept the status quo. I'm sorry if that offends you.
Thank you, Mr. Hand.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My question was, considering the current consultation underway, does the leader support the closure of children's centres in Thurrock?
I will keep this one short. Yes, but I do not see them as closures, exactly as Councillor Holden, who's not behind me at the moment, made clear. It's more reform of children centres rather than closures.
Councillor Gersh, do you have a supplementary question?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My first supplementary, I think, relates to the consultation process underway. And considering that the administration are claiming that this is a completely open consultation, it's interesting, I think, that the saving has already been built into the budget for 2017-18. Madam Mayor, I contend that that's either a dodgy consultation or dodgy budget planning. Which does he think it is?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Gerrish. I won't take any lectures on dodgy consultation. You're probably aware the reason I became involved in local politics is because your party decided to close a local school in Silbury without consultation, but just said, the consultation be, where are you going to go? And this is where you're going to go, it's going to shut. This consultation is clear. We are changing and reforming and making sure that we are not missing out any current providers, and as is now reappeared, Councillor Holden made very, very clear, we're expanding the offer. So doing what we're doing is providing a saving, it's providing expansion, and it's providing services that people need and people want.
Councillor Gersh, do you wish to ask a second supplementary?
Yes, please, Madam Mayor. In a previous answer, the portfolio holder did tell the public there would be a reduction in staff of 10, and that the bulk of the savings would be buildings and not people. Madam Mayor, if I could just quote quickly from the Cabinet agenda from the 12th of October, the new model would reduce the budget for running children's centres by 400,000, with most of the efficiencies coming from reduced staff members. Staff would be reduced from 39 to 41 full-time equivalents. Could the leader tell us why his portfolio holder can't get his facts straight?
When it comes to get facts straight, one of the very few people I would say you can't fault on that is Councillor Holden.
Question 4. Councillor Gersh, would you like to read your question out, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Fourth question, hopefully I'll get an answer one day or another. Could the leader please update the Chamber on progress on the 2017-18 budget? In particular, have all savings or income generating measures for 2017-18 now been identified, or are we still short of target?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Sorry, but whilst it is a closed question, something that Councillor Gerrits does seem to like asking, I can't really just give you a yes or no. There's quite a complex response to this. Also, Councillor Gerrits, getting the answer you don't want is not the same as not getting an answer. I would have thought after a number of years you sat in this chamber, you would have understood that. When we took control of the council, shocked to find we had a budget gap of £4 million to tackle, as well as planning forward for the future. And if we assumed that we're stuck with your quite horrendous budget, with quite drastic cuts to the environment and highway services, yes, everything that's gone through overview scrutiny so far would have matched the budget gap for next year. However, I and my cabinet, and indeed the rest of the Conservative group, were not happy with that. So therefore we introduced the clean it, cut it, fill it. That in itself obviously put pressure on the budget for this year, and obviously for future years. We couldn't carry on, having a borough in the state that you left it. That is appalling.
Yeah.
On top of that, we also did a review of the reserves. You've got to remember, you were in power for 6 years, so we built up reserves, actually built up reserves to the level that was 5 years old. Now we're looking at building up those reserves for the future. So adding those all together comes to about 1.2 million shortfall at the moment. I spoke to the head of service, and indeed my cabinet colleague who has responsibility for finance, who I'm surprised he didn't ask this question soon, and I've been assured by both of them the savings that are coming forward to meet that budget gap will be in the next week or so.
Councillor Gerrits, do you wish to ask a supplementary question?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. While I think we're all hopeful that further proposals will come forward, does he expect to find enough options to give members genuine choices on what we might take forward?
Well, obviously we have started we've been going for a couple of months now, the council spending review, where we put forward a number of ideas and asked for ideas from opposition members. UKIP has taken part in this 100%. I'd like to thank them for that. And not just the portfolio holder, the leader and deputy leader, but on the occasion one of the portfolio holders. We would love to see that obviously mirrored by your group. It'd be nice to see them turn up. And yes, I would like to see a bit of a selection going forward. I don't like saying we need to save X amount of money and only just come up to that X amount. I like to say we've got a bit of headroom here, let's have a bit of choice.
Councillor Gerrits, do you wish to ask a second supplementary?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll just finish by asking the leader, how hard does he think that his administration tried to find a savings or revenue alternative to closing 4 of Thurrock's children's centres?
Again, it's really shocking as a Conservative. We're always blamed, you're always about the money, you're always about the money, you're always about the money. Oliver, you seem to be all about the money on this. It's not about the money, it's about the outcome for children. It's to making sure those families in need get the support they need and they want. And surprise, surprise, the plans that Councillor Holden come up with officers are going to do that and expand on it. I know it's difficult to understand the word expand for less.
Madam Mayor, under current plans, the Conservative administration are due to close 4 Thurrock children's centres in April 2017. The children's centres under threat are Averley, Chafford 100, East Tilbury and Stamford La Hope, as well as additional outreach service cuts. These centres have a very large footprint and do a huge amount of work with local parents. The final decision will be by Cabinet in January. This meeting will be the last chance for the full Council to comment and to make our views known. It is the role, Madam Mayor, of a strong opposition to point out where the administration is about to make a huge mistake and to help correct it. I believe we should send a clear message on behalf of Thurrock's communities: halt the plan to close our children's centres. I want to be clear that we're not saying that no savings can ever be made. Massive government cuts handed down to the Council may make that impossible. But we are saying that wholesale closures on this scale are a step too far. The move would lead to whole communities being cut off and unable to access a centre. I want to challenge this view, Madam Mayor, that somehow children's centres are either not well used or not that important to our communities. Let's take Chafford 100 as an example. The Children's Centre is currently registering 1,082 families in the Chafford wards. They have reached or engaged with 730 families in the last year, which is 67% of registered families. A priority for the centre is to engage with BME families, and again 344 BME families have accessed the centre over the last year. These are large numbers of people being reached and helped. To remove the centres would be an enormous blow to communities. These centres deliver so many important sessions. The universal services on offer at Beacon include things like stay and play sessions to support 0 to 5's child development, rhyme time to support 0 to 5's early speech and language, and of course sessions for under 1s. Madam Mayor, as well as Children's Centre staff, I've also talked to local parents who told me about their experiences and how crucial the children's centres are for them. One told me about how the Children's Centre in Stamford-le-Hope had saved her from antenatal depression, and that now as a new mum she couldn't afford to lose the Children's Centre. I want to quote from one of the local mums, Sally Felton, who has organised a huge petition against the Stamford Children's Centre closures, which has over 350 signatures. She puts it so much better than I could when she says, "I think there is a misconception that some areas need children's centres more, but actually all parents are dealing with a whole range of issues regardless of their location or income, from postnatal depression through to terrible twos. Having a centre with trained staff, available 5 days a week, who are able to offer support and advice is so important, and it is making a real difference. It's such an excellent resource, from being able to drop into open playroom sessions and make use of toys and facilities you don't have at home, helping little ones develop social skills and meeting other parents at stay and plays, through to courses like children's first aid or baby massage. It won't be possible to run this service effectively without having a dedicated centre." Madam Mayor, the children's centres in our communities deliver a vital service, and they reach a big proportion of those that they're meant to help. The proposed alternative is more outreach working, but this will inevitably mean a big reduction in the services available to local parents. And the core question is of reach. Let's take again the example of Beacon Centre in Chafford 100. Currently the centre is engaging with some 730 families, 67% of registered families. Data suggests that areas with outreach working are only achieving 38% reach in Thurrock. It's completely untenable to suggest the same amount of work can be done with parents through outreach, especially with staff dropping from 39 to 21. Put simply, one targeted session per week in a school is not going to be the same footprint as a building open 5 days per week and open to all. You may be able to claim there's still a service, but it is not equivalent to what was there before. Additionally, there is no agreement yet on what services might be offered in the future. Talking to Children's Centre staff, they highlight that there is no plan for what outreach will cover. They've been left confused and without real leadership. The only certainty in this plan is the closure of the children's centres, not what comes after. Nowhere is there an agreement that the kind of reach for the service that Councillor Halden was indicating is going to be anything that is achieved. Finally, Madam Mayor, I'd like to highlight that this consultation has all the hallmarks of a stitch-up rather than a genuinely open process. Firstly, the original ONS committee papers didn't flag the foreclosures and didn't allow a genuine open discussion on service design before going to consultation. Other colleagues will comment further on this, but the Cabinet papers that followed agreed the following. Recommendation 1.2, agree that officers proceed with the proposed joint consultation by Public Health and Children's Services to secure stakeholder and public approval to the model. I'll repeat that. The consultation, as set out by Cabinet, is with the aim to secure approval of the model from stakeholders and the public. Madam Mayor, it's to my mind unprecedented that the goal of the consultation is not to freely seek ideas about how the service is redesigned, it's to get the answer that the portfolio holder wants. That smells like a stitch-up, and to those that doubt it, don't forget Section 151 officers' comments on this motion. The cost reduction has already been built into the budget for next year. Madam Mayor, that's the behaviour of a group that are pretty dead set on doing something against all evidence to the contrary. The service will not grow, it will shrink dramatically. Now, the vote tonight isn't a decision, it's an expression of the will of the Council. I ask that all members support their residents and send a very strong message. Keep these children's centres open. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Is that motion seconded? Thank you, Councillor Fish. Do you wish to speak now or reserve your rights?
I'll reserve my right, madam.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Holden.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This motion's got nothing to do with children's centres. If the Labour Party cared about children's centres, they would have attended Cabinet to listen to the plan. They would have asked questions at Cabinet. They would have spoken to me to make representations on behalf of their constituents. They would have put forward their own ideas. They have done none of those things. I did present myself at scrutiny in July, Councillor Gerrish, to be asked questions. The Chair refused to ask me questions. So do not lecture me. So what is this motion about? If you haven't been doing anything. Oh no, I apologise. You've been tweeting about it. Well done. So what is this motion about? Well, it's about Councillor Gerrish. Councillor Gerrish has been so uncharacteristically active over the last few weeks and months, asking questions on finance, environment, transport, education, social care. He's even wearing a tie for council. It's clear he's running for the leadership of the Labour group. Now, I know we're coming into panto season, so let me say this to the leader of the Labour group. He's behind you. We should measure success based on outcomes for children. Yeah, he actually is. We should measure success. Yes, that one. We should measure success based on outcomes for children, not based on how many buildings, services or staff we have. We want to build a 21st century service, and this is how we're doing it. A single point of access. So instead of fragmented services, one point of access for education and health services, so people can get the support they didn't even realise existed. A new system where all of the current timetable offers are still offered, and not just to 0 to 5s, but to 0 to 19-year-olds. A system that doesn't just serve the current 75%, but aims for 97%. And how will we pay for this? £1.4 million worth of savings each year, every year, built into the base by no longer paying astronomical rents and by reducing duplication in the service. This is not service closures, this is service reforms. I've poured heart and soul into this work. I've visited the children's centres, the schools, the nurseries, the daycare centres, the hubs. I've met with staff to make sure that these plans can actually work. What can you not do other than just turn up for a photo for a press release? Nothing. You've got no idea, no direction whatsoever. I do not want to be the portfolio holder who can just brag about the fact that I've preserved the budget or I'm spending X amount on buildings. I don't just want the status quo. I want to be the portfolio holder that improves services and improves them for children. That is what genuine reform actually looks like. And quite frankly, despite the ambush you've attempted to orchestrate for me this evening, the fact that members of the public actually ask questions makes me think that perhaps they should be in here because they do a damn sight better job than you, Councillor Gerrish.
Councillor Kerry.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have absolutely no hesitation in supporting this motion. I urge everyone else in this chamber to do so. Everyone who serves on this local authority, we know that our mission is to ensure that we work towards communities where individuals flourish within our community. And these cuts will not enable that to happen. These cuts will lead to the destruction of the buildings, the cuts to services, and crucially, the networks that they develop with people who need them. They're crucial services. And to me, this is not about stable communities. This is about taking away a service which supports stable communities, and that's what we should all be looking for within this local authority. All communities, regardless of their location, all individuals, regardless of their means, should be able to access the services that are offered currently through the Children's Centre. For me, this is plain and simply about social justice. And let's not forget as well the staff of these centres. The staff of these centres deserve more than just a threat of redundancy. We should be backing them, not sacking them, and I believe every single member in this chamber should support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Spillman.
Thank you very much. I think this illustrates a little bit the limits of the committee and cabinet system in a political environment where we've got where we just don't have anyone with any overall control. I mean, personally, I would like to have seen a debate which has got such potentially serious ramifications be heard by every single person in this chamber, and a decision being made collectively by everyone in this chamber. I'm not, I have my own values like we all do, but I always try and be as pragmatic as possible. And And I understand, I've been around, and I know that there are some buildings that are a waste of money, and that they're not delivering the services to the right people, which I know that's one of the arguments, that the actual most vulnerable people aren't attending the services, and that the services are designed for. But I also have a lot of time for the aims of the children's centres as they were set up for. So while I am minded to vote with the motion. I definitely am, but I would like to see this debate by the whole of the chamber. Another issue is that, as one of my, I think she's probably my constituent, she's still here, Mrs. Jurek, she spoke about the aid issues, and I've also got issues there because we've just seen lots of services from the forum, and now we're seeing this potential loss of service. I want to see you debate with him with proper amount of time. I want to hear those. I want to hear those arguments because it's a massive issue. Yeah, I'd like to hear it.
Sorry, Councillor Stillman. Before I call the next speaker, it's 20:09. Do we want to suspend standing orders to the conclusion of the debate?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. I'll carry on then. And the next one is Councillor Duffin.
Can this council investigate how this consultation is being carried out? Recently, the council ran a consultation on should poor people work harder or should we cut services. This got just 30 responses. Will we get another sham consultation when it comes to children's centres?
Councillor Kelly.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. So in relation to this particular motion, I've been very much impressed with Councillor Howard's work in his department on the suggested changes to children's services. I think not only is Councillor Howard making the relevant changes, but I feel that he's also making efficient savings whilst in the process. Now, there's 4 areas of focus in the motion. I can only comment as part of Chair of the Planning Committee on Avery. We do have a new community centre going in, not children's centre, but community centre. This is a £2.2 million building that has been raised from Section 106 monies. And this in particular will provide youth facilities, a nursery, soft play area and a community camp. So I'll liaise with Councillor Howard to see what opportunities that may bring. It may not bring in, but we'll certainly as an administration look into that. In relation to this particular motion, I feel that it's realistic that we look at the fact that the country is still in huge amounts of debt, and like most motions that come to council, I do feel that this is pointed at the administration, almost politically point scoring or trying to make a point. And for me, I like substance in the argument in order to support a motion. And so far I haven't heard substance. I've heard that it's a bad idea, I've heard concern, but I haven't really heard of any alternatives. And I think it's important to note that Labour were the administration in May, UKIP were almost the administration in May, and had any of these administrations come to fruition, then they would have been dealing with the current government, and the council would have been dealing with the same amount of efficiency savings that we have to save. So, for me, what I'd like to hear in this argument, if you want me to support the motion, is what would have a Labour administration done? What would have a UKIP administration have done under the same financial constraints? Would have you just borrowed more? Would have you raised council tax? We're making a £400,000 saving here, and this is our idea, this is our plan, and I think it's conclusive. Really, I'd like to hear more if you want me to support the motion, but outside that, I cannot support the motion, and obviously if you do have some fantastic ideas, I'd like to know why in the 7 months this has been going on has Councillor Howard not been made aware of this. Thank you.
Councillor Wheeler.
Thing struck me about Councillor Holden's, which is really good. I mean, he really, I know Councillor Holden as well, and he does take his job very, very seriously. But we are being ripped off by extortionate rents. It seems to me the children and the parents, they're the ones paying the price. Because we are being ripped off. Why are we crushing them? We're the ones who got the money. We're the ones who dictate what's paid and what ain't paid. I mean, if it's only happening on these children's centres, how much extortionate rents are we paying away with the borough? And it's about time we started looking at that. If we want to save money, are we paying too much rent? There's lots of places in the borough. It's to victimise children and parents because we don't want to go fight people. Landlords that want to stole money out of us. I always supported the motion, and when we come up with an idea to get different rents down, then maybe we can start talking again.
Thank you. Councillor Hayden.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I feel I must speak on this motion tonight, as I believe what's been put forward by Labour is thoroughly misleading and does a great disservice to the hard work put in by members in this chamber and by council officers with the best interests in our vulnerable young people and families at heart. This motion states it will leave some of our communities entirely without a centre, having a severe and detrimental impact on local families. Leaving some of our communities entirely without a centre. Is that correct, Councillor Garish?
Yes.
Have you really read the proposals? Have you really? If Councillor Garish had actually read the proposals properly, he would have seen that they represent a combination of plans developed over a long period of time to improve services. Yes, to improve services, not to have a detrimental impact on local families, as his motion says. To improve services with a more targeted, joined up and cost-effective approach, one that focuses on improving outcomes for children and families across the borough. Yes, the delivery model will change and the service may be delivered from a different building in some areas, but the children's centre service in an area will remain. Councillor Held has made that very clear this evening, and indeed will be improved with children's centres offering a broader range of services in the proposed model. So, coming back to the Labour motion, to say that leaving some of our communities entirely without a centre is a very large untruth. The actual proposals that Councillor Garish doesn't seem to have read properly are completely at odds with his motion. I really feel that Labour should be ashamed of the alarm they're causing to our vulnerable children and families. Labour behaved disgracefully on this issue. They failed to reform these critical services within administration, even though they should have known that outcomes could be improved with more joined-up services for young people and families. They turned a blind eye to the eye-watering rental costs on which this council spent public money for some of the buildings that have been hired for delivering these services. They have failed to engage in a democratic process for shaping the reform of these services, with no Labour council attending Cabinet when this came forward. Now they're peddling untruths, saying entire communities will be left with critical service. What a shambolic performance. You should be embarrassed over there. It's no wonder the voters kicked you out in May. For all members have a genuine interest in the welfare of our vulnerable young people, I ask you not to support this motion tonight. Thank you.
Councillor Potterberry. Councillor Potterberry.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm really quite perplexed, I will admit, by the response tonight, but sort of trying to move beyond that a little bit. I find it quite interesting that the Conservatives pick up about Cabinet, because I sat on Cabinet for a while, and I don't really remember seeing any of you there either. I then remember you coming into this chamber time after time after time, asking questions that you hadn't asked us in person, that you hadn't asked at other junctures where you had that opportunity. I think it's called the democratic process. We're elected councillors, this is part of our job. We're just doing it, okay? So if we could just lay off on the sort of don't do your job bit, that would be fab. Okay, so children's centres. I'm going to go out on a bit of a limb here, and I'm going to say I'm probably one of the few people in the room who has actually used children's centres, who I'm not a service user now. My children have sort of moved beyond that stage of their life, but I was. I was a young mum. I'd moved from Grays to Stamford-le-Hope. I didn't actually know anybody in Stamford. My friends all had children later than I did in life, and I will admit I felt lonely, I felt unsupported. I don't have a massive family network locally. Stamford Children's Centre provided a lifeline for me. It was somewhere that I could go. It was somewhere where I made friends. It was somewhere where I created a support network. And actually that small room in East Tilbury that Councillor Halden sort of dismissed earlier on in the evening, actually that was where I met some of the key people who supported me through some of the darkest days I had as a parent of young children. And I mean, I have to credit the children's centres teams in those areas because their support was faultless, and I really valued their service. But I think we have to look at this a bit more broadly. And there's been this argument that, oh, no, we're not closing anything. We're just kind of going to offer lots of fragmented services from lots of different places. Okay, we're not against the idea of you joining up children's and health stuff. We're not against that. What we are against is the wholesale closure of centres that have become community hubs, that have become focuses of community, where people know they can go for support and for help. Now, you've talked a lot about rent, you've talked a lot about that, but let no one be under the impression that a new centre is going to come in a different, cheaper location. That isn't what these proposals suggest. And I've read the report, and I think that there is a real danger to universal services, to the services that all parents use, contained within the report. I would also like to pick up on Councillor Duffin's point about consultation. I've looked through the consultation, and I have to say it's very misleading. There are questions there that put you in an awkward sort of position to do with, that really you could only give one answer to. I think this needs to be rethought. I think what we need is a genuine consultation. It's a genuine consultation.
Thank you. Councillor Okanade.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Garish, thank you for submitting this motion. I would like to ask all members to revisit the Council's vision statement and our strategic priorities, and thankfully these are listed on page 5 of our agenda tonight. Creating a great place for learning and opportunity is one of our priorities, and we've identified that supporting families to give children the best possible start in life is a way to achieve this. There are universal as well as targeted users who depend on the services provided by these centres. Priority target groups that children's centres work with include teenage parents, lone parents, children on child protection plan, children in need, looked after children, and parents with non or low qualifications that they are enabled to engage in educational programs offered by children's centres or other agencies whilst their little ones are attending the centres. Our children's centres also form an avenue where skilled staff can observe and discover anything significant which could be risk factor in the child's future development. Can I just mention that when the committee, the ONS committee, when the report on the review of children's centre service was tabled at the Overview and Scrutiny Committee back in July, there was not a single mention that centres were earmarked for closure. I believe many of the members on the ONS committee, as well as myself, would have raised more concerns with Councillor James Harding, who came to defend his proposal at the meeting. A proposal he painted to be a consultation exercise with the aim of improving joint working and high quality service in the community. It is unacceptable that the ONS was misinformed. I'm seeing in the consultation paper now that closing down 4 children's centres did not feature on the ONS agenda. We know that in Thurrock, we have a very good proportion of families with children under 5 engaging in services offered by children's centres within their catchment areas for easier accessibility. Closing any of them is not a good move for the council. In fact, children's services reliance on effective early offer of help for early identification and intervention for our children's better outcome in the future can easily be truncated with such a move as this. It will be a situation likened to penny-wise. Yeah, it is a situation likened to penny-wise pound foolish. Thank you.
Councillor Watkins.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I will mention the ONS meeting, which was supposed to be 6th of July. It was mentioned actually in recommendation 1.1 board members, which did approve this as well at the same time, which I thought happened across party lines. But they approved that the service would be redesigned and that it would be finalised and that it aims for higher quality service, which is exactly what we're after. And I'd like to add that actually questions could have been asked about what that service was going to entail at that point in time, and no questions about this were actually asked. The only question that was actually asked from the chair was about flexibility and visibility, which was requested. And then following on from that, there was no talk about it in Cabinet, there was no questions prior to that, up to all of a sudden there seems to be an ambush of questions which has suddenly appeared, which I find quite interesting when Labour and opposition are talking about the opportunity and saying we don't ask these questions when we was in opposition. Well, actually you're just doing that right now then, aren't you? You're not asking those questions when you have the opportunity to. And I think this is all kind of headline stuff you're going after here. This isn't about cuts. This is about reforming the service to make it better, to make it more flexible, to give it to more people out there. And I think, unfortunately, what you're saying is misleading.
Councillor Brian Little.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll keep it short if I can. I'm pleased Councillor Holden wants to upgrade this service. I'm not currently happy with 75% of eligible families with children 0 to 5 have access to the services. It's not good enough. We need to move to extend the age range, which we're doing, the services, the outreach, and we're setting an ambitious target of 97%. This is a target Ofsted set for judging outstanding children-centred provision. And why shouldn't we aim for outstanding? Why do we always have to keep going the way we're going and have a poor service? We've got to deliver better services, better quality. The reduction in centres, there will be no decrease in provision. In fact, it will increase as we develop single point of access for health and education. So I won't be supporting this motion.
Councillor Collins.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I can only reiterate everything that's been said tonight by Councillor Little. This is about a reform, not a closure. This is about expanding further choice to the children of Thurrock and improving the delivery of the services that we have at the moment. I will not be supporting this motion.
Thank you. Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It seems only last month I remember asking the question about the mitigation of loss of services at the Bailey Centre, only to be told 3 times that there was no answer. I'm still not even more reassured this evening. It doesn't appear to be any, or I'm not aware, I don't seem to find there's a plan for transition from the old to the new, and I'm wondering about the families and the children that might get lost in the gap. Councillor Kelly appeared to suggest that he's going to be having conversations with the portfolio holder. Again, this reassures me none that Agley Forum Youth and Children's Services have been fully sorted out.
Thank you. Councillor Cockshaw.
I spoke earlier, and this administration can no doubt that we've got to deliver more for less. And we did, and this sticks to that. I spoke earlier about mine and how that runs the right. It's through all the portfolios. We have to deliver more for less. And this shows that we're going to deliver now from 75 to 97%. And that gap is the people who don't go to them centres. The people who are hard to engage, the people who deserve that, the people who talked about the hardship and wents, and people who leave they don't actually, we need to be outreaching to them people. Now, my ward, and I'm going to be nasty, but my ward is a nice ward, and people will use that service. They do, what we could normally call young mummies, they would use this service and get this, and they don't. We need to deliver that last bit, that's really important bit of where they need to be delivering now. And then, also on the fact of that, is Councillor Spillman mentioned that the service we should have a cabinet system. I agree. Remove the cabinet system and go back to a committee system. I think we voted on that administration that my portfolio was bringing forward some ideas for how we would readjust that. But before we could do that, before we changed the system, the leader immediately, as his first act, put all cabinet decisions before we take them to ONS. Now we did that because we felt that there wasn't enough engagement to get the best process, to get conversations, take on board what happens at ONS, take on board it, bring it before it gets to cabinet, before we make decisions. Now that's the only thing we can do at this time until we reform the system. we all agree we need to look at that. So I just think we did as much as we can to get engagement, and I just heard that at the ONS meeting, no questions were asked, no questions. The cabinet member was there to ask that question, to make sure that everyone was informed if they asked. Like, we can't do any more than what asked and this process. Now, when I look at it and I read this system, it delivers exactly what this Conservative administration is. You hear too much from politicians don't deliver what they are. We want to deliver more for less, and that's what we're going to do. And then I hear the members of the public have been here tonight. Well, going by my records, 3 out of 4 were Labour Party members. Now, that is disappointing. If they're members of the public, you can't have members... Let's have a think about it and take it seriously. We don't get taken seriously if we're politicians. It's one-sided. But 3 out of 4, I got to listen to them.
Councillor Hare.
I think my one observation of this debate, probably the wider evening tonight on this subject, is we have done so much about talking about the means, and we haven't actually talked about the end objective. We've talked about children's centres as an asset. We've somehow struggled on to private businesses. Do you know what? You want to achieve 97% of children get access to the right services. Fair play to you. Fair play. Because I tell you what, if you're satisfied with 3/4 of children having access to those services, because it's not in the building that we like, it's not in the building that we've known to come and love, more for you. As for you, Councillor Oppenheimer, you chair that committee. That report was your forum to ask questions in exactly the same vein that Councillor Cockshaw said. I mean, really? You're actually getting up and saying there's nothing in the report? You're the chairwoman, for heaven's sakes. I think, and my last point, Madam Mayor, I am a resident of Thurrock, as is the 49 of us here, and I have used one of these children's centres. My daughter was diagnosed with a slight speech impediment and made use of one of those children's centres. Do you know what? I couldn't care less if that discussion happened in that room. I couldn't care less if that happened there now. Provided my daughter got the right services, the right access to get her speech completely sorted, that was what mattered to me. So let's stop going on about, you know, buildings and assets. Think about the end goal, yeah? Your philosophy on this is absolutely pure. Your philosophy on this is absolutely political. And frankly, some of you over there, I am so disappointed in it. I had quite a lot of respect for you privately, and you have shown your colours in a way that I never thought possible. I'm almost gutted for you, to be honest with you.
Councillor Hens.
I think this has been a really interesting debate, and I just look at Councillor Haigh first of all. Councillor Haigh was leader of the council when we had more than 9 children's centres. He'll know that under the last administration we took difficult decisions to redesign, reconfigure and to reduce the number of children's centres. So for instance in Grays, where there were 3 children's centres, we brought it down to 1. What we tried to do was to make sure there were children's centres left in each locality. You know, there was the old adage, isn't there, that history is rewritten by the winners. It would appear in Thurrock, history is rewritten by the side that finishes 3rd. Madam Mayor, one of the problems, I guess, with having been a councillor for a long time is that you see things coming round time and again, and you learn lessons. And I think there are probably 3 things that stand out here. The first is that this is something that is based on laudable aims. You know, I've got no doubt at all that as far as Councillor Houghton is concerned, the objective of getting 97% access is the one thing that's uppermost in his mind. Yes. However, officers will always put forward those solutions that give you cashable savings on day one. Things that will turn the tap off. And this smacks to me of something that turns the tap off and gives an instant saving. I think it was Councillor Kerry who said that, spoke about helping to build stable communities. One of the things with long-term projects such as Children's Centres Shore Staff is that it's really difficult to value the avoidable costs that will reap savings in the future. There's no kind of matrix for doing that. It makes it very difficult. The second thing is that members, again, with the best of intentions, agree for things to happen and then don't always follow the detail of it. So we've heard several times this evening, we're not cutting, we're not cutting. But what does the council's consultation document say? It says this: what are we planning to do? Question mark. Closing 4 of 9 existing children's centres. So if people have run away with the idea that 4 centres are closing, it's because it's what the consultation says. And the last thing, and I'll do this because Gerard is still stuck somewhere on the M11, and we have to have our history lesson. When I was first on the council, the leader of the council was Jimmy Aberdeen. And for those who don't remember Jimmy Aberdeen, he was a bluff Scotsman brought up in the jute mines of eastern Scotland and learnt his politics standing on a crate shouting at people on sites. Jimmy had generally 3 speeches, and he could get up and give any one of them at any time. I had a look one day at his notes for a speech, and they were handwritten notes. And there was one section that was underlined, and there was a note in the margin. And the note in the margin said, "Argument weak here, shout loudest." Madam Mayor, we've heard lots of loud shouting this evening, and lots of weak arguments.
Thank you, Councillor. In Councillor Hebb's speech, he mentioned Councillor Canale by name. I've checked the Constitution, and I'm going to use my discretion to allow Councillor Canale briefly to come back to the...
I'm very, very grateful for this, Madam Mayor. I did mention that the ONS was misinformed. It was only when the consultation was held. We were able to agree to consultation, yes, that is proper. But when the consultation document was held, that is when we realized, when I personally realized that the plan was to close 4 out of 9 centres, and it was not mentioned in the papers to the committee. So please get that right, Councillor Head, okay?
Councillor Glasgow.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I won't be supporting this, I'm sure that won't come as a surprise. I'm going to avoid now using individual members' names so they don't get another right of response. But a Labour councillor for Grace said that excuse me, I can't be going right. This is about loss of service. Well, I don't know how many times we've said tonight, this is not going to be a loss of service. Actually, we're going to be increasing the service. This is about reform, not about closure. A UKIP member, actually 2 UKIP members, absolutely spot on in their arguments. Tonight should be about discussion. It really should. But the discussion means that we are putting our side forward. Obviously, the Labour group putting their side forward. It's the same as UKIP putting their ideas forward. But listen, listen to the actual facts, and I'll come back to those in a little bit later. Yes, we are paying out way too much money on some of these premises. Unfortunately, because we are paying the piper, doesn't necessarily mean we get to call the tune. If someone said to you, this is going to be 40 grand, we've got nowhere else to put it, we're going to have to put the money where it's required. And obviously, another Labour member said that they reformed the services under them. Well, clearly they didn't reform them enough, because that's why we're still missing 22% of families in this, and most importantly, paying out a huge amount of money for services that we can provide much cheaper and provide much more of. The biggest one, and I will name him because he still gets a chance to respond, is Councillor Gerrish saying this would be a huge mistake. Well, I'm sorry, if it's a huge mistake to increase outreach, to increase the age and provision of those children that can get it, that can increase the number of those that will get the help in a place that they can get the help rather than in a fixed site. If this is a huge mistake, we're quite fine to make a mistake like that because it means our residents are going to get much more bang for the buck. But I'll tell you what the biggest mistake would be is if a member votes tonight to support your motion based on the scaremongering and the rhetoric you've had. You've had 7 months, 7 whole months to engage in the conversation. The chair of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee could have asked one simple question. Are you going to be closing any of these centres? No. She wouldn't even let the portfolio holder speak. So I'm sorry, this all rests on your shoulders and your shoulders alone.
Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Blimey, it's been very shouty, hasn't it?
Well, luckily, I'm not going to get shouted at for not going into cabinet, because I think ever since I've been elected, I've been to virtually every one of them, so I can't be accused of not turning up. And I have to say that because I've turned up, I heard the proposals, and I've got to say not much was hidden. It was fairly open. But people seem to be getting bogged down between whether we're talking about centres or whether we're talking about services. From what I can work out, the actual centres are going, the buildings themselves are going, but the services are going to remain the same or improved, in fact. But I think there is an issue here, though, is that clearly, it hasn't been communicated very well. I mean, even in the budget paperwork, I think Councillor Howard himself admitted it rambled on for very many pages when perhaps a couple of paragraphs could have done. And we have, what, 350 people sign a petition to keep the centre open. They clearly don't understand what's going on. And I think there's been a failure really to communicate particularly well what the actual plans are. Now, I know it's gone through committee, I know it's gone through cabinet, but I think something that's important that this really perhaps should have come here before we sort of made a further decision for us to debate it in full. I won't be supporting the motion, but I won't be voting against it either.
Councillor McPherson.
Lovely, thank you very much indeed. I understand that people are scared of change. I do understand that. And I think we need to work together to get the message out there that our service that we're going to be providing is a better service. Things change and we move forward. We're in the 21st century now and we need to make sure we are providing a service for the 21st century. I missed out on children's centres and I understand what you're talking about with regards to sometimes you need to be somewhere to reach out to those people who are experiencing exactly the same as you, or can give you that reassurance, or can tell you what you're doing is normal, what you're going through. But I've got that now with a 15-year-old and a 17-year-old. I want to have some help now. And with the new services, it's going to be able to provide me with assistance for my 15-year-old and my 17-year-old. Councillor Hebb with his younger children. You know, Councillor mainly if he has children can have a whole experience the whole way through. But we need to provide the right type of service. And at the moment, the service that we're providing isn't right. We've always had opportunities of doing mothers and toddlers and things like this to actually get together, but actually to have a whole holistic approach, to be able to have support through the whole of your children's childhood and know that actually you don't have to go to a centre. If you don't feel comfortable walking into a centre, if you want actually someone to come to you because you're feeling a little bit intimidated, you can have that as well. What we're going to be providing is a service for everybody, from 0 to 19. And if that's what you don't want, you vote on this motion.
Councillor Rayney.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, I can't support the motion. To me, one of the manifest unfairnesses of the current system is that if you live in a community that has a children's centre, you're lucky you have ready access to that. But if you're in a community like Little Thurrock Black Shops, where the nearest children's centre is over 2 miles away, those services are not in your community. Now, I know my constituents can travel, but the reality is the services are not there. They're not on their doorstep. There are hard-to-reach people in Little Thurrock Black Shops. We have a traveller site there. And I'm reassured that under the current proposals, the services are going out into the community. They're not holed up in a building somewhere waiting for people to come there. And I think, to be honest, it's deeply unfair that we have a system where some communities are excluded from accessing these services. I had a quick look at the services on offer at the nearest children's centre to my ward, which is in Grays, and it seems to me that many of the services, you read what's on offer, and next to it says, add your name to the waiting list, call to book, by referral only. I think it's misleading to suggest that you can just pop along to these centres and access the services. My constituents can't, and I'm sure that under the new proposals, they will be able to have the services come to them. And if you're a councillor who represents Stifford Clays or Allsett or any other number of wards, by supporting this motion, you haven't got a children's centre in your community at the moment. You're basically saying, well, actually, I'm voting to restrict the services that my constituents have access to. I think this rolls the services out across the whole borough so that everybody has access to them. So I won't be supporting the motion.
Councillor Fitch, do you wish to speak to the motion as a second?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I do have some sympathy with the administration because I've been in this position myself, having to force through the cuts imposed on you by central government, by a central government that's ideologically opposed to local councils and has systematically, ruthlessly been cutting councils for several years, funding to councils. And I do understand how how the administration are trying to put the best possible gloss on this proposal. In fact, no, they're telling us that the service isn't just going to be as good as it was, it's going to be so much better. But on the other hand, I hear cuts to admin, which means that inevitably that's going to affect frontline services. You know this from other public services such as health. They're talking about key metrics. Who's going to measure the key metrics if the admin service is cut? We're talking about cuts to management. If management is cut, to me that means a lack of direction. So I don't think that really the administration have managed to convince me certainly tonight that the proposals that they're bringing forward are actually going to work. And I don't think the public are going to be fooled by this. I don't think they're going to support it either. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gerrish, do you wish to sum up?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I'm very pleased that we're able to have this opportunity to debate this evening. I'm going to leave it to others to determine whether the plan to close children's centres is a deliberate act of malice against our communities or simply a dangerously naive act on the part of the portfolio holder. However, these children's centres do deliver vital services and support to our children and their parents. They're currently engaging with and supporting very high numbers of parents. The process that has got us to this point hasn't been open or inclusive enough and is focused on closing a Tory budget gap, not doing the best for our families. Madam Mayor, I'll leave those members that are still uncertain with one final thought, and that's this. If the move to outreach and no children's centres improves the service and increases reach in an area, why is it that where we need the highest impact, the best outcomes, those areas in most deprived states, places like Tilbury, places like Purfleet, why is it that those are the areas that we are retaining the children's centres? There's a very simple answer to that, and that's how you get the best reach in those communities. That's how you deliver the best service. I'm not opposed to increasing outreach, but let's do it on top of the additional children's services that we've got, not instead of them. We're cutting staff in half. You can't roll out a universal service across the borough with half the staff that you started with when you haven't got a base for them. They're going to spend their time driving up and down the A13 to get to various locations across the borough. There's no agreement where those locations might be, no plan on what actually might be delivered. Madam Mayor, it's an absolute disgrace that we've got to this point, because all that's going to happen when this motion is agreed or not agreed and when Cabinet makes that decision is that those children's centres will shut in April. There's nothing else in terms of what Cabinet are proposing that will improve or not improve the plan other than that point. And I think we need to remember that. And I think that all members here tonight should take notice of the fact they've been given notice that these cuts are coming to their communities. So, Madam Mayor, we need to say very clearly to Cabinet, we don't support these cuts. You've got it wrong on this occasion. Go and think again. Madam Mayor, I hope everyone tonight supports the motion, and I will call please for a requisition vote.
Okay. Madam Mayor, call out your name. Should you say for, against, or abstain, please? Councillor Aker.
For.
Councillor Allen.
Wish to abstain.
Councillor Chris Baker.
Abstain.
Councillor Councillor Jan Baker. Abstain. Councillor Baldwin. Councillor Cherry.
Against.
Councillor Churchman.
Against.
Councillor Collins.
Against.
Councillor Cockshaw.
Against. Doesn't work.
Councillor Duffin.
For.
Councillor Fish.
For.
Councillor Gerrish.
For.
Councillor Gledhill.
Against.
Councillor Haigh.
Against.
Councillor Holden.
Against.
Councillor Hamilton.
Against.
Councillor Hebb.
Against.
Councillor Cliff Holloway.
For.
Councillor Victoria Holloway.
For.
Councillor Kelly.
Against.
Councillor Cathy Kent. For. Councillor John Kent.
For.
Councillor Kerry.
For.
Councillor Lydiard.
For.
Sorry.
For.
Councillor Brian Little.
Against.
Councillor Susan Little. Councillor McPherson.
Against.
Councillor Manning.
Against.
Councillor Tola.
Against.
Councillor McNardy.
For.
Councillor Piccolo.
Against.
Councillor Apothecary.
For.
Councillor Potter.
Against.
Councillor Redsill.
Against.
Councillor Barbara Rice.
For.
Councillor Summons.
For.
Councillor Sheridan. For. Councillor Smith.
Abstain.
Councillor Snell.
Abstain.
Councillor Spillman.
For.
Councillor Stewart.
Against.
Councillor Stone.
For.
Councillor Thompson.
Against.
Councillor Watkins.
Against.
Councillor Wheeler.
For.
The votes are for the motion 19, against 21 and abstentions 5. So the motion is lost.